Hello, and welcome back to Tech Latest from Nikkei Asia, where we bring you the freshest updates from the technology sector in Asia. I'm your host, Akito Tanaka from Nikkei Asia's Tokyo headquarters, and Cheng Ting-Fang, or Annie as we call her, Nikkei Asia's tech correspondent based in Taipei, will join us for this week's episode. We'll discuss China's rapid expansion in mature chips, what this means for the global tech industry, and other stories that we recommend to our readers. Welcome to this week's episode, Annie. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you a lot, Akito-san, and very glad to join with everyone online.
So for Nikkei Asia's weekly Tech Asia feature story, you wrote about Chinese tech companies' aggressive expansion in mature chips. Now, what is a mature chip and how is it used?
Yes, in the industry, people often call them mature or legacy chips. In fact, they are just chips made with older process technologies and not the most cutting-edge nodes, such as 5 nanometer, 3 nanometer for the latest CPUs or GPUs. That might sound too technical for everyone, but it's easier to understand when you think about it that these so-called mature chips are everywhere in our daily lives, and they are as essential as cutting-edge processors to make a device functional inside your phone, laptop, TV, hair dryers, earbuds, washing machines, and any other electronic devices. They are also found in our smartwatch, industrial automations, car, airplanes, rockets, missile, and defense equipment. And just take your iPhone, for example. It has a cutting-edge core processor, but it also needs dozens of other chips to be able to run, from display to touch ICs, image sensors, power management, facial recognition, audio chips. All of these are mature chips that don't require the latest, most advanced chip manufacturing process used to make processor chips.
Very interesting. So it is very, very important, even though it's a mature and older process technologies.
Very broad.
Yes. And which Chinese companies are entering the production of these mature chips?
Uh, Probably the most well-known name in China in this space is SMIC or SMIC, short for Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp. It's China's top chip maker and basically a contract chip maker similar to TSMC or Global Foundries. SMIC is a key supplier for many Chinese chip developers like Huawei, Unisoc, ASR, and even global players like Qualcomm. They specialize in so-called mature chips, just we discussed, like microcontrollers, power management, sensors, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, that are used in everyday consumer electronics. Now they are starting to serve the growing camp of chips for EVs, for example. But SMIC is not just the only one. Over the past few years, there's been a surge of new government-backed chip makers across China. Many of these have investors of major car maker, tech company, or home appliances brands such as GAC, BYD, Creel, China Resources, and they are working all on mature chips because the equipment there has no restrictions from the US. Just to name a few, Runpeng in Shenzhen, WY Semi in Qingdao, Ken Semi in Guangzhou, Dingtai Jiangxin in Shanghai, just many of them.
Okay, that's a lot of players. And you touched on this a little bit in the previous answer. But in the Tech Asia podcast, we often discuss that the Chinese government is actively backing the nation's chip industry. What is the government's role in these mature chips?
China really sees semiconductor as a key area where they want to boost self-sufficiency. So since 2014, Beijing has rolled out 3 phases of funding for the IC industry, totally about 688 billion yen. So that's around 95 billion USD. That's just from the national central government level, does not even include private investment or funds from local governments. So the total amount is actually way higher than that. And on top of that, they have got a range of other incentives. For example, company can earn R&D rewards, tax credits, or even other form of financial support if they use local chips, equipment, or materials. Some chip makers even get a 10-year corporate income tax exemption if they meet certain criteria. Of course, you can see land, electricity, water are guaranteed and also have discounts for these supported industry players.
I see. So it's heavily government backed. The chip is used all over in many, many, many products. And you mentioned in the article, actually in the headline, that these mature chips made in China are causing a shock in the global semiconductor market. What's the shock and why is this?
Yes, actually, we know that uh, we got a bunch of big name chip makers like TI, NSP, Infineon, SP Micro, Renesas, onsemi that focus on these mature node chips. They are super reliable and widely used in cars and industrial settings, covering everything from battery power to all sorts of sensors for temperature, humidity, and even chips that run your like power windows, dashboards, windshield wipers, LED drivers in your cars. So now there's this growing wave of Chinese chip developers getting into this space, right? They can turn to their contract chip makers like SMIC to produce these chips. At the moment, they are mostly handling the lower end products. But if local car brands like BYD or MG keep expanding globally and domestically, it can also going to foster a whole new group of domestic supply chain in China. So that could be a very big shock for countries like US, Germany, and Japan, which has traditionally been the go-to supplier for these like reliable automotive and industrial chips.
And obviously, the cost or the price is lower than the ones that are made by the Western and the Japanese chip companies.
Yes, the way sometimes China does business can sometimes be pretty harsh. Like when the government gets behind an industry, like they've done with display and solar energy, you've often see floods of new players popping up all over China, all backed by like local governments and getting the support. We've seen how this play out. Look at LCDs. Now more than 70% of world's LCD are made by Chinese companies and 90% of solar equipment. And for advanced the OLED displays, China now controls about 50% just over the past few years. And the same thing could happen in the mature chip space we were just talking about. But China's way of competing can be really brutal. A lot of times, companies start by cutting prices to grab customers and market shares. After a lot of price wars and fierce competition, only a few market leaders will survive. Then the competition gets so intense. So a lot of players, both Chinese and international, end up getting hurt or even need to exit the market. Even SMIC, China's top chip maker, has warned that internal competition is getting fiercer and then prices are likely to drop in the second half of 2025. So some industry executives have described to me that China's market is like a hot pot with a really thick soup.
Very interesting. And as you said, this will probably have a big effect in the global chip market as well, right?
Mhm. Exactly, exactly. A lot of players will get affected if they cannot roll out like added value products over time, if they only stay in the older generation and their products, because China can upgrade their industry if they have more players or system integrators come into the game.
Great. Thank you, Annie, for your great reporting as usual. Are there any other Nikkei Asia tech stories that you want to recommend to our readers this week?
Actually, I want to bring up stories that not only this week, but in the past few months, I would suggest if you haven't have chance to read, we've done a comprehensive feature to map out how China's electronic supply chain is coping after the US blacklist Huawei, cutting it off from foreign tech. China has this localization push, which helped them to master a wide range of components from displays, thermal modules, acoustic parts, and print circuit boards, and just room from 0 to 5% in global DRAM memory, challenging like Samsung and Micron. Overall, I think China is leveraging this massive market, particularly in smartphone and now EVs, to build out its own supply chain. And there were a series of related coverage, and stay tuned for more updates with us.
Great. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode. You can read more of Annie's reporting along with other stories about Asia's tech industry on Nikkei Asia's website, asia.nikkei.com. Thank you for listening, and please come back for our next episode.